I'm Vonny Sweetland, and welcome to Forum Special Report, the show where we discuss challenging topics that are key to moving us forward. Today, we're discussing advancing Canada's Black community. It's an opportunity to dive in and explore while still not shying away from where cultural blind spots still may exist. Today, we're very fortunate because we're speaking with Dane Williams, co-founder of Black Urbanism Toronto and a true advocate for Ontario's Black community. Dane's been on the front lines fighting for communities like Little Jamaica in Toronto and ensuring that he's helping to move the needle forward for his community. Welcome, Dane. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
Hi, Vonny. Good morning. Nice to see you, and thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. Look, with Black History Month on the approach, these are very important topics, especially now. What have you been seeing on the ground, and what have some of the challenges been to date as you've worked on the Little Jamaica designation in Toronto and now community ownership?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think first and foremost, like to kind of, draw back and take a step back, just kind of explaining Black Urbanism Toronto and our organization. So, we were founded by myself and Romaine Baker. We both went to Brock University together. We really understood community, especially at the university lens and the lack of diversity in universities. We both joined the African Caribbean Society there. And what we wanted to build was a community where Black individuals, Black students can unapologetically just comfortably be themselves in a university setting that lacked representation. From there on, we came back to the city and we thought, how can we bring our skills from the university settings and give back to our community? Like, that's really the understanding and the form of how education should be taking place, is you taking your education and coming back to your community and building sustainable growth, and really, through the sustainable growth, like just helping individuals in the community that have been there, that have allowed the community to thrive and grow and provide a different lens. So, from there, Black Urbanism Toronto was born, and we thought, it's our duty to ensure that Black business owners along Eglinton West have the ability to engage in and influence the policies and the plans that directly impact their livelihood. So what we were thinking about is to increase participation in culture and interests of Black people in community development, and to advance the collective cultural, economic, and social interests in neighborhoods that we call home. And for us, Vonny, that's kind of where we started. And how do we create this impact, and how do we create not only sustainability, but growth within our Black communities?
Right. And for those who don't know, tell us a little bit about Little Jamaica. I know that it's in Toronto. And what, again, have some of the challenges been while you were fighting for its official designation?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, this neighborhood has existed from 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. So,
Wow.
It has a great history tied to Toronto and the culture of Toronto. Some of the challenges that we face is really just, there's really a great barrier to entry for a lot of these Black business owners. Even just from a financial institution perspective, getting supports from banks, from lenders, again, really seeping, and I know there's been topics of like anti-systemic racism, Black racism, and it really into these functions of these systems that have been created is really acts as a barrier to a lot of these, Black businesses to be able to function and grow. And what you've seen in Little Jamaica is you've seen an erosion of culture, an erosion of beautification, an erosion of all of these things that are due to systemic and blockage of and lacks of support from various stakeholders within the community. And what we're seeing here, to be quite honest with you, is really from our viewpoint is very planned in focusing on redevelopment, gentrification, and rebeautification of the area that suits external individuals who are looking to now live in the city, in those confines of the city, that can afford the increase of rent, the increase of commercial spaces, and that's really a lot of the challenges that we're seeing on the ground.
Right, that's fair. I think when we talk about gentrification, it's important to note that it usually is communities like Little Jamaica that suffer the brunt of the negativity. I'll say this, a lot to unpack here. We're going to
Yeah,
break to commercial and we'll jump right back in just a few.
sounds good.
Welcome back. We were just speaking about gentrification, and that really brings me to my next topic. Dane, you and I have talked a little bit in the past about the creation of infrastructure, especially where housing is concerned. Now, we know there's been issues with inclusionary zoning. We know places like Dufferin County in Toronto and in Ontario have a lot of first-time home buyers programs. What do you think is missing to help Black residents in the GTA? And if we can sort of snowball in Canada as well.
Yeah, you know what? I think that's a great question. And my response is probably going to be a little bit out of the ordinary because it's not going to be the generalization of looking to, for the current infrastructures to provide support.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to be calling the community and really just my focus is really on speaking to community and understanding the importance of organization. Like,
Sure.
you have to just really look at the structures and how they're in place currently, right? Like we have Toronto community housing that has a lot of, rent to gear income that provides support for low socioeconomic, individuals within the GTA. And then when we look outside of the GTA, we look at, Dufferin County or Niagara Falls, where there's, homeowners programs that lend for support for individuals to be owners of their properties and then being able to now use that as a function of equity to now build and grow communities. Whereas if you're looking in the GTA where there's heavily Black and racialized communities, it's more so we want you to be a part of the conveyor belt of the system. We want you to be a part of the conveyor belt of the institution. There's really no growth option. And I know, Vonny, you and I have talked about, like, again, even with the rent geared to income, if there's any awareness of growth of income or there's, an additional party that enters, you're as a tenant, then you're based off, how much they make and their economic status, that rent now increases. And with those systems in place, my question is, how are these individuals supposed to sustain themselves and grow to be fully self-sustainable, right? Like the systems just aren't built, and the mechanisms that are currently in place are not built for individuals to thrive and grow. They're built for individuals to be dependent on them. So my call out would be to the Black communities across Canada to really participate in group economics and powernomics. It's very similar to, the Jamaican Caribbean culture. We call it partner, where individuals are putting their money in a pool and are really looking to make large purchases. So I would say if you have 5 or 6 people that you trust, obviously visit a lawyer, go through the legalities of it, but really use your finances to purchase back and buy back your properties and then leverage those ownership tools to now, through equity, through, as we see with the real estate market, the rapid growth, and individuals leverage their credit, get debt, build equity, and now grow and use those economic tools to leverage and create business and systems that allow you to be sustainable and grow and participate in this economy. I think as a community, we really need to be mindful of how do we use our economic power to really change these systems, because, in our current state of sitting and asking and hoping and for things to change through, and I think advocacy, which I think is definitely important. Marching is very important. Making your voice heard is very important. But I think also tools for you to be distracted. There are mechanisms that are used for you to really not focus on the economic issues that you need to really be in alignment with, to use as a tool for you to, assert yourself and really start changing systems, and then really building a community where when our young Black, our youth are going to university and going to school and being able to access these skills, can now come back and participate in building these economies, because we build opportunities for them to have, to value their education. In the current system we have, our youth come back to our communities, and then they're now looking for other communities to provide jobs that may not necessarily, and they're the ones that are asserting value on your education. So really, it's about building these economic frameworks that allow our people to build our own self-sustaining economy. I think that's the only method and way of how we step out of these current infrastructures.
Right. And I think the thinking behind that is taking the power back and putting it into your own hands. I like that you talked about education, because I think that's a key component to all of this. We're going to pick up just after the break. We're going to talk about education. We're going to talk about, again, how to advance Canada's Black community just after these messages. So I want to talk about education. We know that the Ford government recently ended academic streaming in Ontario, which was proven to disadvantage Black students. But do we need to go further, Dane? Is there a void where things like financial literacy and entrepreneurship is concerned? I know you were just talking a little bit about this. Let's unpack a little.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, to kind of really unpack it and see, and I know individuals will ask, like, where is this information coming from, and kind of where are these conversations coming from? And I think it's really to first kind of just set the tone to say, with Black Urbanism Toronto, what we were able to do was we were able to host a 2-part Black business conversation consultation series. And then we also issued a Black business conversation report that was released in July 2020 that really unpacked a lot of the infrastructure issues and a lot of the information that were coming from the community as a whole, first and foremost. And then now kind of getting to what you stated, Vonny, around education and impacting and what can we do. I think this is why Black Urbanism Toronto was created, is really to create a forum where we can organize and we can discuss as a community. I think there's really power in community and being organized and working together, and really looking at the community and saying, what are the needs of the community? From an education perspective, where do we need more representation of Black people? How do we these expertise? How do we, understand the infrastructures? I was doing some research and I was just looking into other communities, and in the United States, they were talking about a lot of Asian American communities. What they do is, they obviously get specific expertise that have been addressed by community, that their needs. They go work for the industry for 5 to 6 years, and they're now able to, take that intel, take that information and that knowledge, bring back to the community and build these sustainable businesses that are able to thrive and through entrepreneurship. So I think from my perspective, I think the way we address this is really taking a step back as a community and really discussing what the needs and concerns are in the community and how we fill and bridge those gaps. Because I'll be quite honest with you, and I'm not an educational expert. I'm not a political expert. I'm not any of those. I don't have any of those expertise, but I just think as a community, for you to, hope that these infrastructures that historically, again, if we're just looking through history, you look at Hogan's Alley, you look at in Vancouver, you look at Africaville in Halifax, you look at, individuals even in the GTA don't even understand how, Oakville was 20% Black, at one point in time, and they did help build those communities. Like, there's been an erasure of Black history throughout entirety of Canada. And if you understand these systems, you understand that these individuals will not create systems and structures for us to be able to thrive and grow.
Right.
The only us to be able to understand history and really be solutions oriented in building these infrastructures ourselves.
So would you say then, in saying that some of these traditional power brokers, gatekeepers, and likely these would include politicians, that they cannot be the cure when in some ways they may have also been the cause? Is that what you're trying to say?
I 100%, I think so, because I think if we're just looking at the social constructs of where these individuals have grown up, their environments, their interactions, like, we just need to look at the foundations of human nature. Like, we are our environment. And if I've grown up, and again, like, I don't want to, like, it's really difficult to explain, because I also don't want to frown upon individuals who have had access. They were born to access, and they were able to access, had easy access through education, through jobs. I remember actually, because
But it's responsible to still then jump in and say, you've had this access, we're not going to penalize you for it, but the likelihood is that you may have some blind spots because of that access.
I totally agree, and 100%. And I think that's definitely a fair comment to make and assert. And really, I think ultimately is just, again, like, look at our political leaders, look at their history, look at their socioeconomics, look who they've interacted with. It's, again, like, I totally agree with you. And I think it's fair to say that and call them out on it. And then for us as a community to also understand these are their social norms. And for us, the only way we can build a standard for Black communities is really to put the ownership on us to be able to build the standard, and really develop meaningful engagement to really assess our community tools, our assets, and rebuild our communities.
I agree. All very important topics. We're going to jump back in just after these messages. Data shows that communities of color have the lowest vaccination rates. Some say it could be because of access issues. Others say maybe it's a lack of education around vaccines. But is it something more deep-rooted? Why do certain ethnicities, and in this case Black people, have the fear and apprehension they do around vaccines, Dane?
That's a really great question. And honestly, Vonny, for me personally, I can only again, advice from my own personal stance and kind of what my beliefs are. And I just think, again, like, the same legacy systems that have, been in control from generation to generation. My ask would be is, why would Black communities be comfortable in trusting these legacy systems that have continuously, deprived them? And so from that perspective, again, is just, that's why I go back to, again, the political leadership and the lack of emotional intelligence of thinking that these, racialized communities would be comfortable signing on to the agenda. It's just about having open and honest dialogue and conversation of, why would these communities that have been disenfranchised, that have been gentrified, that like even from the basis of, appropriate community consultation when you're redeveloping their community, why would you now think that pushing a vaccine mandate, they would be comfortable and take, with open arms? I always just talk about it as if, a lot of these communities, it's kind of as if you walk into someone's house and you don't take off your shoes and you open their fridge and you say, what can I drink? What can I eat? And there's no proper conversation or a question asked, or there's no proper form of respect. So again, I'll just push it back to these, the governments and leaders in this country. Why would these racialized communities be comfortable trusting you when, throughout if we go back historically, we can say that a huge, breach of our just, human rights, our respect. Individuals have anti-Black racism issues that are happening in their own workplace, and there's a lack of...
Do you think that we could be doing more? When I say we, I mean as a society. We know that it is not just here in Canada. We see something similar in the US. I heard recently that the United States government was going to be giving $450,000 to migrant families who had traumatic experiences at the border. Mm-hmm. I know here at home we're doing something similar for Aboriginal and Indigenous folks. Do you think that enough is being done for the Black community? And if more was being done, would that increase that trust?
Yeah, see, that's a loaded question, and that's a really great question. And it's really difficult for me to respond because, again, like, my ideologies is always around straying away from, looking for commitment from those systems. Like, can there be more that could be done for Black communities? 100%. I totally agree. But my only issue is that if there's something that's being done historically, again, if you're getting out, there's something that's going to be coming the other way. So that's why my call to action is always for these communities to really empower themselves and really look towards building their own communities and building out these legacy systems and wealth building models internally. Because I feel like if you look for support,
you might not always get it, right? I think what you're saying is take the power back, put the power into your own hands, because if you're going to wait for somebody to do something for you, you might be there empty-handed for a long time. I think that's a good point to make.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think you put it perfectly. I don't feel comfortable in any communication that I have to say, again, like, yes, let's wait and let's wait for handouts and let's wait for help. And we've been waiting and it's never came. So I think now my impact is really focusing on just understanding how special we are as a community. And how much adversity we face, and really just being solution oriented. Like a lot of the time, it's really about your state of mind, and it's in the state of mind of feeling as if you're overwhelmed because you're waiting for support and there's a lack of support. It's how can we support one another? How can we build back trust within our own community?
I agree. Couldn't have said it any better myself. Thank you so much, Dane. I appreciate it. All of these things are very, very important. And it was a real pleasure having you on the show today.
Thanks, Vonny. I really appreciate it.
And thank you to all of you at home who've tuned in and joined us. I'm your host, Vonny Sweetland. And again, this is a News Forum special report, the show where we discuss subjects that are challenging, but key to moving us forward. Be safe, and as always, all voices matter.